Okay, so I'm going to paint a little woodland scene. Due to the fact that I live on the edge of the woodland and I walk in there most days, it's a constant source of inspiration for me. Whether it be the snowdrops or the wild garlic or the bluebells and all the variety of the wildlife and flowers that's in there, it never ever stops being an inspiration. So I've got a little sketch drawn out here, and I'm going to put in my background. First of all, I have my palette set out, my bucket and my picture I'm working from on a screen for the layout of this woodland. It's not necessarily bluebell season on the picture, but this is art and we can do what we like. So here we go, just a big wet brush. I'm going right over the top of these trees. It's really warm here in my little summer house in the garden, so I might regret setting up in here today to paint watercolours. What I want to do is put lots of nice feeling of sunshine through the back here. Pick up on some nice bright greens, and I'm just going to run them around in my wet surface and just let them all mingle and meet up. A little bit darker there, put the roof on. Just suggesting some of the darker foliage on here. Not too dark. Not yet anyway. I'm just going to put this through here, like so. All of these trees in this picture are pretty dark. Lots of sunlight, lots of shadow. But I'll just take out some of the main branches anyway, main trunks, should I say anyway. And that gives me the option to keep some light in those tree trunks if I would like to do that. So I'm just using a squeezed out brush to take that out. Oops, get rid of any drips, like that. A little bit more green in here. It's a foreground tree, so I'll just make that a little bit more lively. Bring some in front of the tree, a little bit. Some in here. Working wet into wet, so being careful not to have too much water on my brush as I load my paint. Ooh, that's strong. So if I use water, I need to be careful about dabbing off. Just before I go any further, I'm going to just put in the suggestion of some of the distant trees there. I haven't actually drawn those in, so I'm just going to paint those into my wet surface. Just drag those through. A little bit of raw umber here, tiny little bit of indigo. I'm just going to suggest some trees in the distance. This woodland. Just letting the paper take the paint, letting it soften. Don't need any hard edges here, just nice, soft, diffused tree trunks, tree branches. crisscrossing. Nice when some of the trees go behind one another rather than all just stopping, being very courteous and giving way to the next one. So we'll continue some of these. Getting a bit strong, that one. Be careful, Carol. Okay. And again, where any paint's gone in where I don't want it, I'm just going to use my brush, squeezed out, to take out some colour. Just putting a couple of little highlights in here. Right, it's just about drying off now. I've got to be very careful because we're getting that dodgy stage where if you keep working you just make a mess of it. So I'll let that dry off now and then we'll come back and work into it. Right, let's put some washes on the foreground. I have put a little bit of masking fluid on there to represent some of the white element in the woodland, the what's it called? The garlic, the wild garlic. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create just a wet surface and I'm going to drop in some of the colours that I want here, being very careful because we want blues and purples and greens and purple are never a good combination when you mix them, so you've got to be careful and just let the colours melt together rather than mix them in. I'm just going to start off working more in the distance here. My mask's still a little tiny bit damp and the last thing I want to do is pick up some of that on my brush. So just working across here, and I'm going to wet beyond where I'm going to paint so my paint can run and run before it meets the hard edge. So again, I want to just put in a little bit of the nice spring green there, which is cascading through the wood from this lovely sunshine coming from the back here. So just putting in some of that first. I'm just going to switch my brush and I'm going to start laying some suggestions for the bluebells, and again I'm just going to make these very random, just letting the colour melt, the green play with the blues and purples. Dropping one colour into another and the colours find their own way, they work it out themselves. If you start wiggling your brush round and round in circles, you just start mixing colours together. Blue's not such a worry because the blue will mix with your green and it'll just create a darker green, but you don't really want to have the purples mixing with the greens if you can help it. So rather wet that so it's all just bursting at the minute. It's going to strengthen my colour up just a little bit so that it doesn't run quite so quickly when it hits the surface. And as I come into the middle ground here, just making the colour a little bit stronger. And I'm going to leave that there and let that a little bit dry. But you see how there aren't any hard edges here, all the colours ran down, the water's down here somewhere, the paint stopped up there. That ensures that we don't get any hard edges running down here. Alright, well that's waiting to dry because it's kind of not dry and tiny little bit damp, and I don't really want to work into that even though it's just a tiny little bit damp, because it's just going to create arguments with my paint, and I'll end up with little hard edges where I don't want them. So we'll let it dry. The dog's coming in behind me. I'm just going to use a little bit of raw umber here, and I'm just going to start painting one of these trees. So just use my brush. Put in a little tree like that. Ooh. Working out of a different palette today, so I'm a bit unorganised with where everything is. Just want something a little bit darker than that, so I'm just going to drop that into the wet paint on my tree there. You see how it just all melts in there? Just using my brush to just drop that in. And let it melt. Playing the surface there. And then darker again, so more pigments. When you get sunshine, you get shadow, so you can have a nice contrast between the light and the dark here. Just allow that paint to melt through. What I try and do is just catch the dry edge of the paper as well, and that gives a nice sharp edge. I'm just going to add a branch on there because I feel like it needs it. Just add my branches as I go rather than copying the photograph exactly. Now, little trick, rinsing my brush out again to get a bit extra light on this inside of the tree. Just going to put my brush on and just push the paint back. Rinse out the colour, squeeze out the brush, and then just sweep the colour back. It's drying extremely fast here today. But that's what we get for working in the garden on a summer's day. But there we go, there's a nice little tree. And I'm going to paint all the other trees very similar to that, using a similar kind of method. And the closer the tree that is in the picture, the stronger the colour's going to be. So the little trees that are further back won't have the amount of colour that has got. Will make those weaker. So this one, for instance, is further away. So I'm just going to make that one using the same colours. Even the gap there where the foliage is going through. And I'll just define this edge just a little bit more. There we are. That will do for that one. Now let's see. So the foreground is dry. I'm going to work it pretty much like I did the rest, wetting the paper. Just want all this to be a flow of colour, because when you walk through there, don't see many flowers in focus except one or two that's directly in front of you. The rest is just a big splodge of colour. So just working in our woodland colours again, sunlight and the bluebells. And when I say bluebells, it's just a big splodge of colour. Purples and blues. A bit more blue on my brush. And again, just allowing the paint just to melt. Don't want to be pushing it around too hard. I want this paint just to run in together. It's the beauty of watercolour. It does all the work for you if you let it. Just using my big flat brush here, just filling in space. I quite like that. So I'm going to put my flat brush away. No, I'm not. I'm not going to put my flat brush away. I just want to put a little bit of more shadowy colours in the foreground here. So I'm just going to put it. Without getting too fussy. I want the paint to do the work here. I want the water to carry the colour. And I'm really quite liking that. So I'm going to quit while I'm ahead and let that dry off. Right, I'm going to paint this tree, and I'm going to try not to get my big head in the way. Just want the cloth. Brush. Try not to fall over dogs and keep my head out of the way. Right, so this foreground tree I want just to be a little bit more lively than the others. So I'm just starting off with a little bit brighter colour there, and then I'm going to go back into my greys again. I'm just using raw umber and shades of blue and basically just whatever I can fish out my palette as I'm going, trying to keep the colours in the picture fairly kind of uniform. I don't want to go too many different colours in here, and I'm just dropping those colours in very randomly through into the tree there. Okay, and again making it darker. I'm going to make it a little bit greener here. Maybe see some bits of moss or something growing in the tree. I'm just using the tip of my brush. I've got a number 10 round here. It's this SAA. It's a synthetic brush, but I really like it. It's works really well, holds plenty of water, and it has a nice spring to it, and I do like a springy brush. So that as I flick, my brush comes back up to meet me again. The dog's going to start barking. Never be a pro. Come here. Good girl. Don't blame it for barking at all the people going past. Wish they'd all go home or something. Right, let's keep it getting this nice and dark again. So adding my nice rich dark blue and browns. This is just nice and damp now, so the paint's still moving. Can you see what I'm doing there? Just flicking the colour in to suggest some bits of bark. Paint's getting thicker and thicker so that it doesn't run quite so fast. A bit more, a tiny bit of water, otherwise it doesn't flow. There we are, a nice dark shadow on this end now. Nice rich paint. And I'll just do that little trick again with my brush. So squeeze out my brush. I'm just going to take out a little bit of colour down this left hand side. Here you go. That was my tea being delivered, my coffee being delivered. Ah, very good. So there's that tree done. So I've lifted out that left hand side, and then after I've lifted out, I've just gone in with the tip of my brush and just put a couple of little marks back in there to fill in some of the bark there. Make it nice and dark on this bottom end here. Do have some masking fluid there, so strengthen up some of these. There we are. Coffee time. Alright, I'm just going to put a bit of colour in this little footpath here. Just wiggle a bit of colour in. Not too strong back there. Nice kind of orangey brown to complement the greens in here. And a little bit of my dark colour that I've been using in here, so I'm just what I've got dark in my palette, and I'm just going to put that in along the edge a little bit, smaller in the distance, little marks I make, bigger in the foreground, just little bits to suggest it's a shadow over the footpath. I think that'll do for that. A bit heavy, just dab it a little bit, add a bit of texture. Now that colour I can actually maybe take through into some of the foliage here. Just add little bits here and there. There's the dog. Just so that it sits in the painting in other places. Where I put that in, just make sure I don't get any hard edges, so just knock out any hard edges there. But that little bit of orange in the landscape always helps, just to make it not so green. That's better. The other thing I want to do here with this ground is fill in a little bit more of the bright green. I feel like I've lost some of the sunshine out of the picture. So I know you get some shadow, but I want to try and create the sunshine coming through. So I can just take a nice, I'll clean my palette out. Nice kind of yellow green glaze in here, and where it's dry I can just lay a little bit of sunshine back through this picture. Just got to be careful where I've just gone in with that orange because it's still a little bit wet there. If I go over the blue, it's just going to add a little bit of green, so it'll all link through. And like I say, I'm not putting it on very thick, it's a glaze, and if it looks a bit hard on the edges, just tickle it with the edge of my brush so that it doesn't. Just want to put a little bit light through there maybe. And in actual fact, just a little bit of shadow there as well. I don't feel like I've got much shape in this ground over here. So I'm just going to put a little bit of, just tapping the colour in there, creating little wet surfaces and then tapping the colour in. And that's sunshine again. Just putting a little bit of sunshine. Right. Oh no. Swap my palette over. So I just want to add a bit more flower to the foreground now. Just make sure you can see that. Some more blues. Let's have more bluebells in the foreground. So again, just I'm going to use the belly of the brush here and just dab in here. Some colour to suggest some more bluebells. Now if I take my flat brush, I just tap it open and I can just use my brush to create some uprights here. So I can lay on with the side of my brush, corner of my brush, and I'm tapping my brush, and I can lay in suggestion some upright bluebells. Some shadow in there. If in doubt, add purple. They always say that. Why I always say that. And that will just give the impression of some of these little overhangs of bluebells. Some shadowy ones there. Let me beat that brush. There we are, looks like bluebells, doesn't it? A little tiny bit further back, not too much. Got to filter it out a little bit. Actually getting less as it goes further back, but we can put a little bit in there because it's fun to do. This is the trouble half the time, you get carried away because it's fun. I'm just going to stop there, let it dry, and then take my mask off. While I'm waiting for that mask to dry, I just want to strengthen up some of the foliage in this top of the picture to give it a little bit of strength there as well. So go back in with some of my nice rich greens. Just mix myself up with green here. Blues and yellows. When you want a shadow green, you need more blue. Okay. And I just want to create a little bit of stronger foliage running through the top of the trees here. Just using the side of the brush to suggest a little bit of foliage. We don't need to paint all the leaves. We don't need to come too far down the picture either. Well, these are big tall trees. Bit more blue in there. I have to shade it down just a little bit more. Got it dry so fast today. But never mind, it's nice to be out painting in the garden. Drying them up just a little bit. Just tapping light there. Get a few little leafy bits here and there. I just need to look at it. What I need to do is just bring a little bit through here. A little bit of foliage in the back there. Just soften those off a bit. few shadow greens down here. But this is drying off just a little bit. Right, I'm fiddling now. Right, there you have the finished picture. I took the masking fluid off it, and I decided I hadn't really put enough on in the first place. So much for the forward planning. But do you know what it is? I quite enjoyed spattering a little bit of white across the top of that, so a little bit of gouache or a little bit of watered down acrylic, and it just sets off those nice dark foreground colours, adds a little bit more of effect for the wild garlic and bluebell combination rather than just the bluebells. So it's all in all just a bit of fun in the afternoon, and I'm sharing it with you. Enjoy!